They say little towns keep secrets better than cities ever will. In a sleepy corner of rural Georgia, where the fields run dry every summer and the paint peels off every porch, a girl named Glory learned that the hard way. Her mother had been the only warmth she knew, a woman who sang gospel while hanging laundry, who scraped coins to send Glory to Sunday school with polished shoes. But cancer doesn't care about good mothers. When it came, it ate her up so fast all Glory could do was pray the next day would not be the last. And when the last day came, all her prayers turned to dust. Her father changed overnight. Gone was the man who used to lift her on his shoulders at the fair. In his place was a bitter shadow that reeked of moonshine, his breath sharp enough to slice through any kindness left in that weathered house. Her stepmother, if life were fair, there'd be no word cruel enough to fit that woman's tongue. She pinched Glory's arms when the neighbours weren't looking. She fed her stale bread while her own son licked butter off warm biscuits. And Glory, with her two big eyes and her mother's soft curls, just took it. Because what else can a 17-year-old do when the roof over her head comes with the price tag of silence? Then came Harrison. He'd been working her father's field since before the cancer took everything. A young black man with rough hands, broad shoulders, and eyes that looked away whenever Glory's stepmother hissed poison through her teeth. One muggy afternoon, when the debt collectors came knocking, her father owed Harrison more wages than he could ever pay. Glory heard them arguing through the thin kitchen wall. "Pay me my wages, Mr. Peterson. I earned every cent." Her father spat back. "You'll take what I give you, or you take the girl. That settles us." The room went silent. Glory's heart stopped. She pressed her palm flat against the splintered doorframe, praying she'd heard it wrong. But she hadn't. 2 days later, with the dirt road kicking up behind an old Chevy truck, Glory sat in the passenger seat next to Harrison, one small bag of clothes, her mother's Bible, and the sharp sting in her chest that said, "You weren't even worth a handshake goodbye." No one came to wave her off, no one said, "Stay." They left that town as the sun dipped behind the fields. The same fields where she'd spent her childhood bent over rows of cotton, trying to grow something good from dirt that only took. And for the first time in her life, Glory asked herself, if you're traded for debt, what do you owe yourself to be free? They drove for hours, no radio, no words, just the sound of Glory's heart pounding in her chest, louder than the cracked asphalt under the old truck's tyres. Harrison didn't look at her much. Every so often, his eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, like he was checking if her father's shadow might come clawing down that lonely country road. But men like her father don't chase what they've already thrown away. By the time they reached the city's edge, the sun had fallen behind the gas stations and broken billboards. Harrison pulled up behind a big old mansion, the kind that looked like it belonged in better neighbourhoods than any Glory had ever seen. Except he didn't take her through that grand front door. He led her around the back, down a narrow gravel path, to a tiny wooden structure that leaned sideways like it'd sigh with relief if someone just let it collapse. Inside, there was a single iron bed, a dusty chair, and a cracked window covered with newspaper clippings instead of curtains. No carpet, no heat, just 4 walls that didn't talk back when you cried. Glory perched on the edge of that bed, hugging her mother's Bible to her chest. She could feel Harrison's eyes on her. Not hungry, not cruel, just tired. Tired in a way that felt heavier than the cold air seeping through the walls. He cleared his throat, voice low like he was afraid to break something fragile. "It ain't much, but you're safe here. No one's gonna touch you, not me, not them." He pointed back toward the mansion. Its windows glowed like gold against the night, but Glory knew better than to trust warm lights from a house that didn't belong to her. For a moment she almost thanked him, but the words stuck in her throat. What do you thank a man for when you don't know if you're free, or just a different kind of prisoner? She lay down, shoes still on, hands gripping the Bible so tight her knuckles ached. Through the cracked window she saw the shadows of the mansion's rich world moving behind fancy drapes. Laughter, clinking glasses, the smell of food drifting through the cold. She wondered if they'd even noticed the girl outside their gates, the girl traded for less than the price of a tractor tyre. But for the first time in years, no one called her worthless. No one slammed her into a wall for breathing too loud. No one told her to hush when her stomach growled at midnight. So when her eyes finally closed, somewhere between the creak of the old door and Harrison's quiet footsteps outside, Glory learned that sometimes a locked door wasn't freedom, but it was the first promise that tomorrow might not be worse than today. Morning in the city felt like a lie. Sunlight brushed over the grand mansion's walls, like nothing bad could ever live there. But Glory knew better. Beautiful houses had darker corners than any shack back home. She stood outside this back gate, hands trembling around a broomstick Harrison had handed her at dawn. "If you want to stay," he'd said gently, "Mrs. Walker's got to see you working. Head down, mouth shut. That's how you survive here." Glory nodded. But even as she swept leaves off the back porch, she felt eyes watching her. Eyes that saw every threadbare stitch on her dress, every scuff on her old shoes. Mrs. Walker appeared like a ghost at the glass door. Silk robe, hair pinned high like a crown she wore even in her kitchen. She pushed the door open so slow the hinges didn't dare squeak. When she stepped onto the porch, Glory dropped her broom. Instinct, from years of flinching when someone powerful looked her way. Mrs. Walker's gaze slid down Glory's frame like she was inventory. "So you're the one Harrison dragged in. I thought you'd be taller." Her tone sliced deeper than a slap. Glory's lips parted, but no words came out. Mrs. Walker circled her like a hawk sizing up a rabbit that had wandered too close to the fence line. "Can you read, girl? Can you write your own name? Or did your father trade that too?" Glory's cheeks burned. She wanted to shout, "Yes, I can," but her voice withered like weeds under the sun. She just nodded, a single trembling nod that made the old woman smirk. "Harrison's soft heart will ruin him. Don't ruin my house while you're at it. Sweep quiet. Speak less." Inside the glass door, Glory saw a dining room bigger than the shack she'd slept in. Silver spoons, velvet drapes, things her mother used to dream of owning one day. Now she was the broom girl in the corner. The girl traded for a debt smaller than the cost of Mrs. Walker's shoes. But as Mrs. Walker turned to go back inside, Harrison stepped into view at the garden path. He didn't say a word, just met Glory's eyes with a look that said, "It's just a gate. One day you'll stand inside it, on your own terms." Glory gripped the broom tighter. 1 leaf, 2 leaves, 1,000 more. Maybe, just maybe, she'd sweep a path clear enough to walk through that door without anyone's permission but her own. The next few days blurred into the same small mercies. A broom in Glory's hands. The hiss of Mrs. Walker's disapproval through the hallway. The hiss of richer women who never even looked at her face. Only her frayed apron, her dark skin, her calloused fingers. Glory learned to keep her eyes on the floor tiles. How to move like smoke, there but unseen. But the nights were worse. She'd lie awake on the narrow cot in the wooden shed behind the mansion, stomach gnawing at itself. No dinner plates here, just dry bread, a cracked jar of peanut butter she stretched over 3 days. One night, the wind howled so hard the old door rattled in its frame. Glory wrapped her mother's Bible in her blanket, clutching it to her chest as if words on the page could warm her ribs. A soft knock startled her. She sat up, hair sticking to her cheek, eyes wide. It was Harrison, standing at the threshold. In his hands, wrapped in an old dishcloth, was a paper bag still steaming at the corners. "Mrs. Walker had leftovers. I figured you'd be hungry." He didn't step in, didn't sit, just held it out, arm trembling a little in the wind. Glory unwrapped it on her knees. A piece of fried chicken, a biscuit split in 2, and half a sweet potato pie. To some folks it was scraps. To Glory it was a whole feast, better than any Sunday dinner her father ever bothered to bring home. She should have devoured it, but halfway through she paused, hands greasy, throat tight. Harrison still stood there, eyes darting between the shadows in the yard and the warmth on her lap. "Did you eat?" she whispered. He shrugged. A lie even a half-starved girl could taste. Of course he hadn't. He'd given her the biggest piece, like he didn't even exist when her hunger did. So she broke the biscuit clean down the middle, held half out, palm open, like a truce, like a secret only the night could keep. "You gotta eat too, or what good's any of this?" Harrison looked at that half biscuit, like it was a gold coin. Slowly, he stepped inside. The wind rattled the door shut behind him, the world outside forgotten for one small moment. They ate in silence. No fancy cutlery, no soft napkins, just 2 souls who knew what it meant to give up your last bite so someone else could feel human again. And maybe, just maybe, that night they both learned kindness tastes sweeter when you only have scraps to give. Glory thought the hardest part would be the hunger, but she learned quick. Hunger is honest. It tells you exactly what it wants. People? They feed you just enough to see how far you'll crawl for more. After that night, Harrison stayed away, busy with the mansion's grounds, fixing the gates, hauling boxes in and out for Mrs. Walker. She saw him through the kitchen window sometimes, the back of his shirt soaked in sweat, sleeves rolled high over his dark arms. He never caught her staring, but Glory always turned away before he could. Inside, the mansion breathed a different air. Warm ovens, footsteps on polished floors, laughter floating through doorways Glory never dared to cross. One afternoon, Mrs. Walker's son, Daniel, returned from college. He had that smell about him. Money, cologne, new leather shoes clicking too loud on the same tiles Glory scrubbed on her knees. She felt his eyes before she even heard his voice. A chill on her neck as she wiped the table in the sunroom, so clean she could see her own tired face in the glass. "You're Glory, right?" His tone was silk and spit all at once. She straightened, mumbling, "Yes, sir." Daniel leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. His grin was all teeth, pretty but sharp. "You like it here? Got enough to eat? Maybe you'd like more?" Glory's spine stiffened. She hated how her body still flinched when a man stepped too close. Daniel reached into his pocket, pulled out a crisp $20 bill, wagged it between two fingers like bait on a hook. "For you, buy yourself something nice. A dress that doesn't look like it was dragged through the mud." Glory's lips parted. Her tongue burned with the word no, but the smell of warm bread and hot meals made her stomach cramp. He took a step closer. Smell of cologne. The soft menace of wealth you didn't earn but could wield like a knife. "Or you could come upstairs, we could talk, just us." For a moment, Glory saw her mother's face, the way she'd say, "Child, your worth ain't for sale, not for pennies, not for millions." She stepped back, feet planted, broom handle like a shield. "I'm fine, sir. Keep your money." Daniel's smile dropped like a mask slipping. His eyes turned cold, ice where sugar had been. "Suit yourself. Girls like you never know which side of the gate they belong on anyway." He flicked the bill on the clean table. It floated down slow, a paper promise she would never cash. When he was gone, Glory picked up the 20, fingers trembling, then tore it clean in half. Let the scraps drift into the trash along with the dirt she'd swept up. Because sometimes scraps taste like love, and sometimes scraps taste like poison. Glory vowed she'd never swallow the wrong kind. It started the next morning, like poison slipped into her tea when she wasn't looking. Glory walked into the laundry shed behind the mansion, arms aching with baskets piled high with silk sheets and velvet drapes she'd never be allowed to touch if they weren't dirty. The other maids, the ones with soft hands and sharper tongues, stood clustered near the door, pretending to fold towels. Their eyes cut at Glory like razors. Their giggles dropped like knives. She caught her name floating in the air, wrapped in something sour. "That's the one, right? The farm girl who thinks she's too good for Mr. Daniel?" Glory paused, hands buried in damp linens. "Didn't she try to trap him? Heard she's been sneaking into the big house at night." Lies. Sticky, easy lies. No one saw her tear that $20 bill in half. No one saw the way Daniel's smile had curdled when she said no. No one ever does. By noon, the whispers had drifted all the way to the kitchen, where the cook slapped Glory's wrist when she reached for a leftover roll. "Don't think you're special just 'cause you got pretty eyes, girl. Earn your bread like the rest of us." Glory wanted to shout, "I didn't take nothing I didn't earn." But the words died under the weight of all the eyes that turned away, already convinced they knew what kind of girl she was. She dragged the laundry out to dry behind the shed, the sun beating her shoulders raw. Each sheet snapped on the line like a whip, one more rumour, one more crack across her spine. Through the heat shimmer, she saw Harrison's silhouette near the tool shed, hammer swinging, fixing a broken post. For a second, she wanted to run to him, tell him everything, tell him how Daniel's words had turned her good name into mud, tell him how the women spat at her feet like she was filth under their boots. But Glory swallowed it back. He was the only man who'd never looked at her like she was for sale. She wouldn't dump her shame at his feet, not yet. So she folded the last sheet, wiped sweat from her neck, and whispered to herself, "They can twist my story, but they can't twist what I know is true. A lie can bend a girl's back for a while. But the girl who knows she's not what they say, that girl stands up taller in the end." By Friday, the lies had wrapped around Glory like a rope tightening slow around her throat. The maids wouldn't touch her laundry anymore. Mrs. Walker stopped asking her to sweep the front steps, muttering, "Bad for the house's name," as if Glory were a stain that wouldn't wash out. And Daniel? He strolled past her in the hallway, smile smug and lips dripping sweet poison for any ear that wanted to listen. Poor thing, she wanted too much, now look at her. That afternoon, Glory stood in the kitchen, scrubbing potatoes for a dinner she'd never tasted. Her knuckles bled raw against the coarse brush, but the ache was better than hearing the same whispers bounce off the tile walls like bats. Suddenly, a sharp voice split the air. Mrs. Walker, her robe flowing like a storm behind her. "You, farm girl, come here." Glory wiped her hands on her skirt, heart pounding. Mrs. Walker held up a silk scarf, delicate ivory, too fine for dirty hands. "Did you steal this?" Glory's mouth dropped open. A silk scarf she'd never seen, but now it was her guilt to carry. "No, ma'am, I never touched it." Mrs. Walker's eyes narrowed, her perfume choking the air. "Don't you lie to me. Daniel said you've been snooping, taking things that aren't yours." In the corner, the other maids peeked out, waiting, hungry for the show. Something cracked inside Glory then. Maybe it was the rope of silence snapping. Her voice trembled but didn't break. "I never took a thing. I ain't no thief. I work, I sweep, I sleep in the shed. That's all I do." Mrs. Walker stepped closer, too close, her words venom. "Ungrateful little stray. Don't think you're better than the dirt we dragged you out of." Glory's eyes burned, her hands balled into fists at her sides. "Better dirt than a snake," she whispered. "At least dirt feeds the flowers. What do you feed, Mom?" For a moment, the whole kitchen froze. No one had ever heard her speak like that. Not the girl traded for debt. Not the broom girl who kept her eyes down. Mrs. Walker's hand rose halfway, as if she'd slap the word dirt right off her lips. But she stopped. The slap would have been easier than this shame. Later, when Glory stumbled out into the backyard, tears stinging her cheeks, she felt a shadow beside her. Harrison, silent, his eyes soft but his jaw tight. He didn't touch her, he didn't say "I told you so." He just stood there, a warmth between them that no whisper could drown out now. And for the first time since she'd been traded like cattle, Glory realised, your voice is yours, and once you find it, they can't buy it back. By dusk, the air around the mansion turned thick with something meaner than thunder. Mrs. Walker's words spread fast, faster than any truth Glory could ever catch up to. In the servants' hallway, the maids who once whispered behind cupped hands now spat outright. They flung her rags to the floor, hissed as she bent to pick them up. "Think you're something now, little mouthy thief?" Glory said nothing. What was left to say when no one cared about the truth? When she pushed open the door to her tiny shed, the first thing she saw was her mother's Bible lying on the ground, pages fluttering, mud on the cover like someone had kicked it there. Her blanket was gone, her bag overturned. One by one, every piece of her was scattered like trash someone had swept out the back door. Harrison stood by the fence, hammer in hand, frozen. Glory dropped to her knees in the dirt, gathering the ripped pages with shaking hands. She didn't sob. The crying had dried up hours ago, somewhere between the accusation and the echo of her own voice fighting back. Harrison knelt beside her. His hand brushed hers so gentle it made her want to shatter. "They did this?" She nodded, jaw clenched to keep her dignity from spilling out with the tears. "I spoke up, just once, and they kicked me out like I'm nothing." Harrison looked back at the mansion, the golden windows glowing warm for people who'd never know what warmth really cost. He turned back to Glory, voice low but sure. "You ain't nothing, Glory. You're the only true thing they've ever had near them. And that's what they hate most." He lifted her Bible out of the dirt, dusted the pages off with the calloused palm that once dug trenches for their gardens. "You can't sleep here tonight. They want you gone. I'll take you somewhere safe." Glory almost laughed, a broken, small laugh that stuck in her throat. "Safe? Where? I don't have a home. I don't have family. I don't have—" "You got me." 2 words dropped in the dirt, heavier than any roof she'd lost. That night, they walked away from the mansion. No bag, no food, nothing but a torn Bible pressed to Glory's chest and the echo of her steps beside Harrison's. The storm broke over their heads, real thunder this time, drenching them to the bone, and Glory realised as they trudged through the rain-soaked alleyways. A house can throw you out, a man can buy you cheap, but a heart that stays, that's the only shelter no one can tear down. It took all night to reach the edge of town. Glory's shoes were soaked through before they even made it to the bus station. The few coins Harrison had in his pocket rattled like stones, barely enough for 2 tickets to nowhere special. They didn't need special, they needed free. By sunrise, they stepped off the bus in a neighbourhood so forgotten even the streetlights gave up shining at night. Boarded up shops, stray cats fighting over yesterday's scraps. But to Glory the air tasted like a clean page. No more whispers, no more doors slammed in her face. Harrison found them a room above a tiny corner store. One creaky bed, a stained sink that spit brown water half the time. But when Glory lay down, the walls didn't hiss her name like a curse. The first morning she woke to find him gone. Panic clawed her ribs. He left like the rest. But then she heard the thud of footsteps on the old stairs. Harrison pushed the door open, arms full of canned soup, stale bread, a used kettle that rattled in a plastic bag. "Borrowed some from the old man downstairs," he said, cheeks pink with cold. "Said we can pay him back when we stand on our own feet." Stand on their own feet. Glory clung to that line like a blanket. For days they ate cheap soup by candlelight. Harrison found odd jobs, repairing fences, hauling trash for the corner store. Glory scrubbed floors at a church 2 blocks over, where nobody cared who her father was, or what a rich boy's mouth had said behind her back. One evening, after sweeping pews until her hands ached, Glory sat beside the old pastor. She told him her story in pieces, not the worst parts, but enough. He listened, didn't pity her, didn't judge her. When she finished, he leaned back, eyes soft. "You want to heal, child? Then help heal others. That's how you keep your soul clean from the dirt they threw on you." Glory carried that home like a seed tucked in her chest. At dawn, she told Harrison, "I want to go back to school, maybe nursing, maybe medicine, something useful." Harrison just smiled, tired but proud. "Then we'll find a way. If I gotta break my back working 3 jobs, you'll have it." Glory touched his hand, rough, cracked, warm. "And one day, when we're steady, we help folks like us, people nobody sees until they need saving." And in that drafty little room with the streetlights flickering below, Glory knew they'd lost every roof that ever failed them. So they could build one no rumour, no lie, no man with money could ever knock down again. Years rolled by like beads on a broken string. Sometimes they fell through Glory's fingers, days she couldn't tell hope from hunger, nights she and Harrison counted every nickel twice just to make rent. But each sunrise, they found a way. Glory cleaned houses, watched babies for the neighbour next door, memorised biology textbooks late at night when the city slept. Harrison fixed fences until his hands cracked, painted houses for men who never remembered his name. One fall, Glory stood in a thrift store holding a worn nursing school flyer. She read every line 3 times, half believing the words might disappear if she blinked. When she turned, Harrison was behind her, greasy work shirt, a tired grin. "You take that paper home, Glory. It'll hang on our wall till you get that degree." They pinned it above the sink in their 1-room apartment, next to old grocery lists and folded prayers. The world still threw shadows at her. People still looked at her brown hands and wondered if she was worth the chair she sat in at class. Some nights she'd come home, eyes burning, whispering to the cracked ceiling, "Am I enough? Will it ever matter?" And every time Harrison's voice, "You're more than enough, you were born more than enough." Years later, not overnight, not like magic, but like roots fighting through concrete, Glory graduated as a nurse. She wore her mother's old church dress to the ceremony, pinned with a tiny gold cross that had once been hidden inside a Bible, battered but unburned. But that wasn't the end, just the beginning. With what they saved, Glory and Harrison rented a small brick building near the edge of the same neighbourhood that had once turned her away. They painted the door robin's egg blue, a colour that looked like mourning, like something forgiven. They called it the Open Door Clinic. No one was turned away, not for empty pockets, not for rumours, not for the dirt on their boots. People came in with coughs, with fevers, with wounds that needed more than bandages. But what they really found was a kindness they thought the world had stamped out long ago. One grey morning, Glory looked around the waiting room. The worn benches, the laughter of children playing in the corner, the old man asleep with his hand on a Bible just like hers once was. She remembered her father's field, the night she'd been traded like cattle, the whispers that called her worthless, and she breathed it all out, every poison word, and let it drift far away. Beside her, Harrison squeezed her hand. Outside, the city roared on, blind to a little brick building where a girl once called nobody now kept a door open for everybody. And Glory knew pain planted the seed, love grew the roots, and kindness is the tree that never dies. Sometimes, the most precious thing you lose isn't a roof over your head, it's your faith in yourself. But if even one person believes in you when the whole world turns its back, and if you still hold on to a heart that knows how to give, then from your deepest wounds you can grow a shelter no storm can tear down. Kindness doesn't ask to be repaid right away. somewhere, somehow, it always finds its way home. Thank you for choosing to watch this story among thousands of videos out there. I truly appreciate every second you spent here with me. If this story touched something in you, please leave a comment, share how you feel, and don't forget to like and subscribe so we can meet again in the next story full of hope. See you next time, and until then, stay kind.